So I hope most of you got to come to the Gala Awards dinner last night. It was an amazing, amazing evening. We honored our progressive heroes, Jan Schakowsky, Van Jones, Majora Carter, and that wonderful man you're going to hear more of today, Norman Lear. But as we settle down and think about the rest of the day, get ready to march to the White House if that's what you're planning to do, we have a very, very full schedule running up through lunch. And as we think about our progressive champions from last night, I want to remind you that last week we got the sad news of the passing of a real progressive champion, former Senator Howard Metzenbaum. Howard Metzenbaum was a progressive champion who represented Ohio for 3 full terms in the U.S. Senate. A proud liberal from Cleveland, he was a fighter for civil rights, for workers, for consumers, against corporations. And after retiring from the Senate, Metzenbaum was the leader of the Consumer Federation of America. And we at the Campaign for America's Future benefited from his wonderful art collection, some of which he donated to CAF in our early days that helped us get started. Howard Metzenbaum was one of a kind. We need more strong leaders like him in the U.S. Senate. And now, to introduce our incredible next speaker, Norman Lear, please welcome the dynamic young leader, founder and director of Young People for the American Way, Yada Peng.
Thank you, Roger. I grew up in a family that didn't talk much about religion or God. But when I was 14, I was introduced by my friends to the concept of God through a Bible study group. I didn't really understand what they were saying, but the idea was intriguing. And I remember when I got back to my house, I got into my room alone, I got down on my knees, and I said to God, "If you are real, I want to know you." That moment was the beginning of a journey of learning and wanting to connect my actions to a deeper set of values, to a greater sense of purpose. It is rare in our progressive community to have this space to talk about religion and values and to explore the deeper connection to the reasons why each of us does this work. Whether it's a commitment to Tikkun Olam, to social justice, whether it's our faith or our conscience. It is amazing that Norman Lear, a man who has achieved such tremendous success in so many areas of his life, is the one who takes the time to invite that conversation for me. His is the voice I hear saying, "They will know you by your deeds." He is the one who always asks first about my new baby boy and myself before asking about my work. Norman has created tremendous opportunities for me to have a greater impact in this world. Most recently, he provided the platform for me to build and to grow a critical national program to engage the next generation of young, diverse, progressive leaders. I am incredibly grateful to him. I love that Norman takes risks in people and in ideas, especially that he took a risk in me. But what I truly admire about Norman is that he so clearly does this work out of a genuine love for people, out of a genuine love and respect for our country, out of a genuine commitment to the values that make America great. At a time in his life when most people would be content resting on their laurels, Norman isn't. He is here with us. at Take Back America to remind us that we have the responsibility to build an America that lives up to our promise, that we need to do what we can to make sure that our children and our grandchildren grow and live in a society shaped by the American promise, that we hold steadfast to the values of justice, of fairness, of equality, and opportunity. That is real leadership. That is real inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Norman Lear.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Good morning. How did the fellow say it last night? Good morning. I want to thank you, Yada. My mentoring her, she speaks of, but she cannot understand how much her being there for me, how much I have enjoyed watching her grow, has nourished me. I'm so proud of everything she's done. How many are we here? 1,500 or so people? I'm sure there's no one who doubts that young woman is a star. She was a star the day I met her, and it's been the kick of my life watching her get discovered. Young People for the American Way, generating and nurturing young progressives in colleges across the country, was her brainchild, and it is her singular triumph. Let me thank Bob Borisage and Roger Hickey once more for asking me to come here. I've been up about 20 minutes, and my mouth hasn't caught up with my tongue yet. But my heart and my mind is very much in what I want to say. And I woke up also thinking of my mother, because maybe it's because the laugh she earned here last night. So whether you want it or not, I'm going to tell you another story about that woman. I invited her to California some years ago for a few weeks. I wanted to show her, she was turning 80, and wanted to show her as good a time as I could possibly show her. So she went to tapings of All in the Family. She went to Maude and the Jeffersons, good times. She had lunch on the set of Mary Hartman. I had a party for her at home with most cast members and so many of my California friends. I wasn't in the habit of going to premieres, but I did take her to two. And at one premiere, she met Lauren Bacall and Groucho Marx. And I said to her, Mom, when I introduce you to Groucho Marx, do not touch him. By all means, do not hug him. So, of course, she hugged him. And over her shoulder, he said to me, tell this hooker I haven't got a dime. Anyway, I did everything to make her trip as entertaining as possible. And when I was taking her to the airport, she was going back to Bridgeport, Connecticut. She was telling me what a good time she had, how wonderful it was. But then she said, when I get back to Bridgeport, dear, and you happen to be talking to your sister, you hear I told a little white lie, you won't be upset. I said, Mom, you had a wonderful time? She said, wonderful time. What little white lie might you be telling? Nothing, darling. I just don't want you. You know, you call your sister, you call her daughter. Somebody might tell you I told a little white lie. Mother, what little white lie might you be telling? You promise you won't get upset, dear? I won't get upset. What, Mother? Well, who has to know that I didn't get to Las Vegas? Well, I concluded my remarks last night by talking about having had a born-again American experience. That's the best way I can describe what tugged at me in 1980 when I stepped away at the peak of the success of our television company that my partners and I had built to travel the country raising funds and awareness and supporters for People for the American Way, to counter the burgeoning threat of the religious right. And I use the phrase born-again American for another reason. Robert Bellah has pointed out that any functioning society needs two great myths to propel it forward: a shared national myth and a shared religious myth. Often overlooked in the United States, in Bellah's words, is an elaborate, well-entrenched civil religion that exists alongside of and clearly differentiated from our churches and our synagogues. The civil religion has a religious dimension that has seriousness and integrity, and as much in seriousness and integrity as any of the other religions, and requires the same care and understanding. The phrase civil religion is not intended to encourage a form of national self-worship. From time to time, we've had enough of that. The nation wants to be subordinate to its ethical principles as presented in its founding documents that guarantee freedom, due process, equal opportunity, and equal justice under the law. Ideals the founders pledged their lives, their fortunes, and I love this phrase, their sacred honor to secure. It's been 7 years since the killer combo I referred to last night, the neocons, the theocons in big business, succeeded in getting us to vote in an administration that could not be more contemptuous of these principles. As my friend Marty Kaplan has written, this may be the most brazenly lawless administration in our history. No other president has found such joy in spitting on our system of checks and balances, defying the will of the Congress through presidential signing statements, featuring evidence that is torturing evidence as well as prisoners, to refusing to let the executive branch employees testify, and forbidding their Justice Department from enforcing contempt citations. And our third co-equal branch of government, the Congress, where has it been? So fearful, so freaked out by the possibility that they'd be called bad names, terrorist appeasers, Osama enablers, jihad simps. Our representatives in the Congress have simply rolled over time and time again and let that gang of neocons and Bible-thumping bullies have their way with them. I think of this inability to be sufficiently aroused by such attacks on America's core principles as a massive case of electile dysfunction. Let's all say that together. Electile dysfunction. 2 words, entirely inappropriate, perhaps, to sum up the condition we find our country in today. But I'll contribute $1,000 to the organization represented by anybody in this room who thinks he can produce a more accurate 2-word description of the problems we face. We are in deep shit. Of course, we can overcome, and we will. I wouldn't want to wake up any morning I didn't believe that. But everything in me screams that the mess we are in will not be cleaned up by more of the same. The right has had its day. It's up to us now. Time for us to stand up, strong and proud on our liberal, all right, call them progressive legs. Whatever happened to that word? How did we let them beat us out of it? How did that happen? We let them beat us out of that fine word. But we have to breathe new life into our democracy. And it can't be the same old, same old. We've got to find a new and better way to talk about patriotism and love of country and God. We own that also. It's ours, faith and patriotism. But we, and I mean all of us, not just our mainline church leaders, we've got to reinvent citizen action for the internet age. In addition to the desire, today everyone needs the tools and the power to truly participate in our democracy. But isn't that what the founders intended when they wished the people to be the masters of their own government? And isn't it what the will of the universe must have intended when the internet came out? We can all remix America now. Remix America? What's that?
Have the right, if not the obligation, to speak out on any political issue.
Norman, I don't always agree on politics.
My way, it's your way. My way.
The moral decline of America. Norman Lear.
God. The American way. It's the morality everybody should share. The system can work for them if they care to exercise their rights as citizens.
We don't want just accommodation. We want to take over.
They don't seem to brook any room for disagreement.
No other way.
That is wrong.
That's what Jesus Christ told us.
Mr. Religion here wasn't seeing eye to eye.
I point the finger in their face.
Are they going to have any hope and belief in the future?
People are destined for hell.
Pray.
I'm an American. Religious.
American.
American.
America, the land that I love.
But there must be something wrong when anybody
Christian. Herbert.
tries to tell you that you're a good Christian or a bad Christian, depending on your political point of view.
We was all Americans.
In the Word of God.
In God's heart.
G-O-D.
We was all Americans.
Freedom of thought is going to lead to destruction.
It's the American way.
Not the American way. Think it and then act on it. That's the message. That's the message. The American way.
Fly home, sweet home.
That's a bit of a remix, and consider that a tease for the conclusion of these remarks. For now, as I'm talking about God and such, you could be wondering just who this guy is who may not sound like he's ever even seen a Bible, yet thinks he can talk freely about God to a bunch of free-thinking progressives, and about patriotism to a crowd of 1,500 or so who may not have a dozen flag pins between them. My love of country started at my grandfather's knee. He was my mother's father. Remember her? I lived with him for 3 years, starting when I was 9 years old. He was a tall, straight, crusty old man who came to this country when he was 26 years old, found a job, and then sent for his wife and 2-year-old daughter, my mother. And in the immigrant tradition of his day, he worked his ass off. He had but one soft spot, this tough old guy, his America. He'd take me to parades, and there were lots of parades then. There was the 4th of July parade, the Veterans Day parade. We had 2 Presidents' Day, Lincoln's birthday and Washington's birthday. Lots of parades. And we'd stand on the corner, and he'd hold my hand tight in his hand, and as the flag and the martial music played, I could feel the tightening of his hand. I'd look up at his face, and inevitably, there'd be a tear coming down his cheek. And to the extent that love of country and the privileges of citizenship matter at all to me, I know I have to owe it to that old man. Of course, now I'm my old man. Not that I feel it. I get a kick out of my age. I mean, just getting out of a chair and crossing the room can get me applause. Watch this. As Archie would say, case closed. My good mornings are now thought to hold deep meaning. And the problem is sometimes I believe it. But the impact on my life of my grandfather's love of America and the American promise couldn't be clearer. Picture this. I'm 11 years old. I'm lying in bed late at night with a crystal radio set and headphones, secretly listening to the FDR bashing rants and the anti-Semitic diatribes of Father Charles Coughlin, whose radio sermons in those years reached millions weekly. And why? Because I guess I had already developed what turned out to be a lifelong sensitivity to religious intolerance and the intrusion of any one religion in the public square where all religions are welcome and no one of them favored. Cut to high school. There was an American Legion oratorical contest in 1939, my senior year. It called for a 10-minute speech on some aspect of the Constitution. I entered. The focus of my speech was my dedication to the First Amendment, and under it, Father Coughlin's right to be heard, as ugly and unsettling as I may have found it. I won the Connecticut Championship and a scholarship to Emerson College in Boston. One Sunday in my freshman year at Emerson, word came that the Japanese had just bombed Pearl Harbor. I wanted to enlist immediately, but my parents insisted I remain in college. With an urge to do something, I set up a stand at Emerson to sell war stamps and bonds, and one day an executive in a department dedicated to marketing the war effort in Washington, I'll never know how I happened to remember his name, but it was Milburn McCarthy, Jr., phoned me and congratulated me on having started the first, what he called, Collegiate Defense Stamp Bureau. I didn't know I had done that. But I accepted the honor, and under Mr. McCarthy's auspices, collegiate defense stamp bureaus began to proliferate across the country. And then a big radio show of the day, The March of Time, read about it when a Boston newspaper hailed it as an act of patriotism, and they flew me to New York to tell the story on air. But then at the last minute, they canceled my appearance when a little boy with infantile paralysis was captured in a memorable photograph kissing President Roosevelt in his wheelchair. The boy replaced me on the air. I received a pat and a hug from Milburn McCarthy, Jr. Later that year, I broke the parental yoke and enlisted in the United States Air Force. I have not spoken of it often, never publicly. Kathleen Turner last night had no problem with it, however. But I served in a B-17 Flying Fortress with the 15th Air Force out of Foggia, Italy. We flew 52 missions and we dropped bombs on Germany 36 times. At the train station, when I left for the war, my grandfather held me a long moment, and he cried. When I walked into his apartment after the war, he saw me for a split second as I entered, choked up, disappeared, and it was a good half hour before he would come out of his bedroom, eyes red, face swollen, and take me in his arms. And over my shoulder, I heard him say softly, "America, God bless America." There is a straight line between the 11-year-old boy listening to Father Coughlin on his crystal set to the apprehension I felt in 1980 when, alarmed by the vile religious and political intolerance of the TV preachers, I experienced what I now describe as a born-again American moment and dropped everything in my life to plunge into the vortex of politics and religion. I found myself congenitally inclined to espouse a positive, inclusive sense of patriotism and of religion. Patriotism does not just belong to those who flaunt it. It belongs to all of us, as does God. God, I have to make that clear. Thank you. Our civil religion does not belong to fundamentalist Christians alone, or even to mainline religions, our own mainline religion. It doesn't belong to our pastors and ministers and rabbis alone, and perhaps their families. It belongs to us and our families, however we wish to grapple, grow, seek. It belongs to all of us, to the non-religious and those still searching. That was easier said than done when I produced the TV spot that got People for the American Way going. I realized at the time, after I'd made it, that I was going after the religious right with two strikes against me. I was a product of the Hollywood community, and I was Jewish. So I flew to South Bend, Indiana, I think I mentioned last night, but it's worth repeating, to Father Hesburgh, then president of Notre Dame. He encouraged me to do more and gave me the names of other mainline church leaders, and I set out across the country to meet with them, to show them the spot, to talk to them. They were Lutheran, Baptist, Episcopalian, Jewish leaders, several of whom later graced our board. And driven by the same spirit of inclusiveness, in 1982 we produced a 2-hour special for ABC entitled I Love Liberty. I love liberty, and I love this show. When I tell you about it, you'll understand. From Kenny Rogers to Christopher Reeve, and Walter Matthau to Robin Williams and Mary Tyler Moore, Barbara Streisand. It was a star-studded show. 2-hour TV show taped at the Los Angeles Sports Arena in front of a crowd of 20,000 people. You saw on the tape they ran before I came up here last night, just little pieces of it. But what I savored, and you saw this, what I savored most was that Barry Goldwater agreed to be on the same stage with Jane Fonda, and vice versa. And that John Wayne, the John Wayne estate let us have footage of Mr. Wayne, in which he attested, along with the others, that he would fight, any fight, for the right of people with whom he so vehemently disagreed to speak their piece. To further prove the show was nonpartisan, we had Gerald Ford and Lady Bird Johnson serve as co-chairs. Now, that's my America. That's the America we progressives can bring to the fore. It wasn't Richard Nixon's, evidently, because he is heard to say, you can still hear it on the White House tapes, that while he thought Archie Bunker funny, he resented that the producers were making fun of a good man. And of course, later I made Nixon's enemies list. And the irony of ironies is for the last 2 nights, I have been in the Richard Nixon suite. What would Richard E. Nixon, as Archie called him, what would Richard Nixon have thought of my becoming the proud owner of a rare copy of the Declaration of Independence that was printed the night of July 4th, 1776? My wife Lynn and I purchased it at Sotheby's and put it on the road for everyone to view. It is the nation's 5th certificate, and we felt it belonged to everyone. It's our birth certificate. We started a new organization, Declare Yourself, to exhibit the document as part of a larger effort to encourage young people to register to vote. In 2004, we registered 1,200,000 online. And we will do well over 2 million in this iteration. The Declaration has traveled everywhere. I have watched families standing in lines around the block for as many as 90 minutes to spend just a few seconds with that document. As my kids would say, it was awesome. A spiritual experience. A born again is an American experience. Watching others, some with tears in their eyes, having that kind of experience with their Declaration of Independence. And that brings me to the God part of the God and patriotism equation. They both draw their power from appealing to the deeper side of us. I want to repeat that. They both draw their power from appealing to the deeper side of us, the part of our souls that yearns for a connection to something larger and more enduring than ourselves, the part that makes us human. The real crime committed by the neocon-theocon big business alliance has been to hijack all of that good stuff as tools for expanding their political power. Well before the Reagan Revolution, Irving Kristol, one of the godfathers of the modern Republican Party, astutely recognized the huge partisan advantage that could be had by exploiting religion, as he put it. I really thought that religion has a role in redeeming the country, he said, and liberals are not prepared to give religion a role. Conservatives are, but don't know how to do it. Well, with the help of the Reverends Falwell, Swaggart, Robertson, et al., they quickly learned how to do it, which eventually propelled George W. Bush into the presidency twice. Bush's most enduring legacy may be the normalization of religious demagoguery. But here's our question. How could we, rational, wonky progressives, fearful today of calling ourselves liberals, quite evidently in the course of these 2 days it has occurred to me many times, how have we let this go by so long while totally absenting ourselves from a more serious discussion of religion and the sacred? How could we have been, in philosopher Jacob Needleman's phrase, so metaphysically repressed? When we weren't consigning spiritual matters to Oprah or the far corners of the blogosphere, we were avoiding the topic by pigeonholing it as a matter of church, state, separation. I don't believe that's who we are, not deep down where we live, just because we are reasonable, open-minded people. People who, in John F. Kennedy's words, look ahead, not behind. Just because we're people who would welcome new ideas without rigid reaction, who care about the welfare of the people, their housing, their schools, their jobs, their civil rights and liberties. Just because we are people for the American way doesn't mean we lack religious identities. The percentage of the believers among us ranks with the national average. And we stand behind no one. We stand behind no one, Dr. Dobson, in our multiple dedications to the Almighty, to a supreme being, to God, to fate, to what will you call it. The only thing that separates us from you, Pat Robertson, is that we will fight for anyone's freedom to be a secularist or a materialist or an atheist and still be a full-fledged American. Now, I happen to be born a Jew. I am a Jew. And I love and I'm proud of my people and our culture, and I could not be prouder of what in our long history we have brought to the world. There was a book written about Edith Bunker called Edith the Good. The author's thesis was that although she never spoke of it per se, Edith's every reflexive reaction to any situation was what the producers thought Jesus' reaction might be. The author was correct. Everything in me tells me that the world would be an exquisite place to live if every encounter, if all of humanity reacted to every human encounter as we all imagined Jesus would, and as we imagined Edith would. I call that mamalushin. That's a Yiddish word meaning straight talk mixed with common sense, but actually it goes deeper than that. Mamalushin is the understanding that comes when one's common sense derives as much from the soul as the mind. That's mamalushin. And that's what the Sermon on the Mount is, mamalushin. And anything that ain't mamalushin doesn't square with my religious sensibilities. Of course, there are those who will feel I'm altogether off base. I have to be altogether off base because I'm not talking with words that mean anything to them. They lack scripture and theology and ecclesiastic authority. I'm no rabbi, no minister, no imam. But I feel what I feel, and I can only express it my way, and mustn't that be true of each of us? Sitting in the same pew, reading from the same sacred text, week after week, I submit that each of our compacts with the Almighty is so personal, so mysterious, that like no two snowflakes, no two thumbprints, no two relationships to God inside are alike. I can't bite into a ripe peach, a just ready piece of Crenshaw melon, or a great ear of corn without thinking, thank you. As a young man, when I smoked my first cigar, I recall turning to a friend and saying, you know, if there was no other reason to believe in God, it would be Havana Leaf. I have always felt God's presence in laughter, too. The laughter I hear. Sitting in the back of an audience when we were taping one of our shows, watching 300 strangers rising in their seats as one and then coming forward and falling back, as people do when they are laughing from the belly, I have had a feeling of such exquisite togetherness. Only the Creator's presence could explain it. And I have fallen in love, actually fallen in love, with a total stranger several aisles and many rows away at the sound of his or her distinct laugh. And of course, I've experienced that presence in the face of my children, my grandchildren, and every time throughout my working life when I've gone to bed with a second act problem and awakened in the morning with a solution. A question that always occurs to me when I think about this: do most people have an image in their mind when they hear the word God? I don't, unless maybe it's thank you spelled out. Now, there was a time when I wouldn't go near this topic, absent a strong relationship to some synagogue or some church, without grounding in a specific religious text and structure. Maybe before this journey ends, I'll actually join a synagogue, but for now, I am simply a groper. And because I'm not a member of a specific congregation, I think of myself as an unaffiliated groper. But in the light of recent headlines, friends have advised me to change groper to seeker. And so I will. Our lives begin and end in mystery. And until we have a better picture of the beginning or the end, to some extent it would seem we are all seekers. We are all nourished in our search for meaning by the same well of wonder. And when I think of that well, I always imagine a river, say a river running 1,500 miles, where the climate changes along the course of the river, and the trees and the vegetation, the flowers along the banks, all change. Yet it's all being fed by the same waters. It's that river, call it a river of reverence, that unites and nurtures all of us and all of our religions, and even those of us who are outsiders to religion, the seekers for ultimate meaning. Damn, I love this stuff. I love this stuff. We liberals and progressives just cannot continue to allow this territory to be preempted by those who insist that their narrow, distinctive theology gives them a greater right to be heard. We can't let that happen anymore. We must be able to participate and make clear what we too regard as sacred in the universe, on earth, and in our daily lives, and in all of the policies, all of the morality, all of the things we discuss on the public square. Our feelings about that morality in terms of what we feel in a religious, spiritual sense have got to come to the fore too. Our civilization depends upon it. Lewis Mumford, the great scholar and historian studying the fall of Rome, said that Rome fell not because of political or economic ineptitude, or even because of the barbarian invasions. It collapsed through a leaching away of meaning and a loss of faith, a barbarization, he said, from within. With all the greed, deception, and corruption occurring today in American politics, business, banking, medicine, healthcare, that is arguably what is happening, a barbarization from within. Politics and legislation alone are not going to stem it. The external regeneration we require has to begin with a regeneration from within. We in this room, and every kindred progressive spirit, must find the resolve to resurrect this nation, to call forth proudly our deeper love of country and its natural companion, our sense of the sacred, born again as Americans. And whether they call us liberals or progressives or bleeding hearts, our bumper stickers and T-shirts should read, "Label us as you will, but know us by our deeds." Know us by our deeds. Since we call ourselves progressives, we might think of engaging tomorrow progressively. With industrialized civilization threatening the planet, with 6 billion human beings searching for new ways to survive, and with my God is better than your God aspect of religion more menacing than ever, the planet and its inhabitants cry out for progressive leadership. George Bernard Shaw believed that it was the will of the universe to move inexorably to perfection. I believe that. And it follows that if that is the will of the universe will supply the understanding and the tools to engage the dilemmas of our time. And it has, if we are open to the answers that are right before us. The miraculous gains on all fronts in the sciences and the wondrous new technologies, such as the internet. The internet, as democratic an institution as ever conceived, not as yet, the private property of a group of international media conglomerates. Contrast that with the conventional media, in which 91% of political talk radio on the stations owned by the top 5 commercial station owners is conservative, only 9% progressive. And 92% of the same radio stations, 236 out of 257, do not broadcast a single minute of progressive talk radio. While we progressives have to fight our way back on the radio spectrum, it is the internet, open to all, that is ours to claim and protect as a commons. Earlier, I used the word Remix America, and you saw that little piece. It's coming online soon, a project of Declare Yourself and Young People For. Remix America will allow Americans everywhere to use the new digital technologies and the distributed power and collaboration and participation to help them reimagine America. Lincoln spoke of a rebirth of freedom in his Gettysburg Address. You will find the entire address at remixamerica.org. Take just that phrase, take that and a bit more, if you will. Take the whole speech, but wait. Up there you'll also find JFK at his inaugural. You'll find Eisenhower's farewell address, a speech by Barbara Jordan, readings of the Declaration and the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta by well-known actors, remarks on America by everyone from Muhammad Ali to Stephen Colbert. There will be over 200 such pieces up there in what we call the American playlist. Toss in some music by Woody Guthrie, Aaron Copland, the Beastie Boys, 9 Inch Nails, David Byrne, and dozens more, and you'll find all the tools you need to do the remixing and the editing. The power of an entire post-production studio with an amazing digital library of creative assets free on every person's computer. Want to know what progressive can be in the new century? It's about communication power like this from the skyscrapers of big conglomerates and putting it into the hands and laptops of ordinary citizens. Cicero called participation in power freedom. That's what progressive is. That's what Remix America is. I see a viral explosion of born-again Americans of all ages and ethnicities, conditions, and backgrounds, awakening to their power as free citizens in a free society. I see them doing it in 3 to 4 minute bursts, mixing and mashing their stories and hopes and dreams with the words, images, and music from the American playlist, a touch of Tom Paine here, a slice of the Magna Carta there, to give us all a glimpse of the America they wish for. An introduction to remixamerica.org is up there now. The full site will be available in May. When the site is ready, you may wish to remix my remarks and the video of my appearance here today. You may want to edit me down. I would do that. Or mix me with Nine Inch Nails, or add in my mother. If that's what you want to do, who am I to say? Remix America. Remix America is one progressive initiative. All of you have others, I know. But let's not be afraid to go forward, fully realizing who we are as progressive, not fearing the demagoguery of scoundrels and charlatans, but declaring our own spirituality as the firm, sentimental patriots we are. Let our moral imperative be to engage the mystery, to engage a power that is greater than us, and to apply ourselves personally and passionately to the challenge of resurrecting our beloved nation with liberty and justice for all. And we here collected do mean all. To that purpose, I declare myself a born-again American. Thank you. I did it last night.